Welcome once again to J Lowe Artist YouTube channel. I'm Jeffrey Lowe and glad you're here. I'm glad you're drawing with me. Thank you for all your support and all your comments. Today we're going to be using just normal Crayola color pencils. They're inexpensive and easy to get. This technique can be transferred to any other type of medium, any other type of colored pencils. So come on, draw with me. Thanks for being here. Got your number 2 pencil, which is what we're going to be doing all of our preliminary stuff with. First of all, let's get our proportions and everything in. We're going to first start out and just figure out how big we want this thing. So if you come down from the top, you think, okay, I want to leave myself a little bit of space up there and have his tail maybe somewhere up in that area there. So you can just do a little line, just say that's where his tail goes. And so his head's going to be down in here somewhere. You want to leave yourself a little bit of space over here for the nut. So somewhere up in here is where his head goes. You want to just kind of make this little oval. And then right next to that is that little nut, and that is kind of another little oval. And then his body kind of comes down off of the head here, and then just a little curve. It's almost another little oval right there. We've just established the size of everything we want. No details. Now that we've got our size, now we can start saying, okay, I can see where other things are. There's the core of his tail. It's right there. You've got to leave a little bit of space for the fuzziness over here of his tail. And I might do it like his arms, just a little curve right there somewhere. If you come right off his head and then kind of curve down, it kind of connects right there. Same thing with just off his arm, there's kind of a little area for his leg. And his little foot, don't worry about individual little toes yet. You just kind of block it in. It's another little foot there. And that kind of purpley rock with the little green moss on it, that'll be kind of fun to put in there. We could drop that in there. Now that we've established how big it is, and we've pretty much got our proportions, then we start doing some more light details. Like where his eye is, where his ears are. The eye is almost right smack dab in the middle of that circle. About right in there somewhere. His little nose is about right in there somewhere. That far ear is just above his eye, so wherever his eye is, if you go straight up from there, it's about where that far ear is. I'm not sure that you need to really define where his tail goes, because that's just a lot of fuzz that's going out in there. Maybe make that nut just a little bit bigger. And really, I don't know if there's much more that we need in there, because there's just a lot of this that we're going to be doing with our colored pencils. And the pencils are just the pencil we've just done is a guide. And as an artist, you kind of decide how much of that do you need. We're going to get rid of a lot of it anyway. So you may want to use your kneaded eraser to just kind of pull out some things and add in some things that maybe you feel like you do need. I'm not trying to do individual little details, just kind of blocking it in where I feel like it goes. So like little fingers are just little sausages. We can get to those other parts a little later. You just kind of block them in where you think they go. Squirrel fingers are kind of weird looking. Now we get to choose our colors. You always want to start with your light and dark colors. So your lightest color is probably going to be a yellow. I'm going to choose that more golden yellow. So there's my light. Now you want your darkest color. Well, eventually we're going to need a little bit of black, some other darker colors. Our darkest color is either blue or purple, and I'll kind of leave it up to you which you do. I'm going to go with the purple, just because the purple tends to blend a little bit more on the red side, and you can blend it with the yellow and get it kind of gray. We need something warm. I've got this red orange that is very warm. It's on the red side. I see some of that in the nut, in his toes, in his tail. There's a really nice color. It's tan in the nut, and maybe some of his little fur could have a little bit of that in there too. We want to go kind of color crazy. The other red color that I want to use is this magenta. I know you're looking at it and thinking, well, where in the world can you see magenta, Mr. Lowe? I think that that's going to mix with the purple. It's going to mix with the orange. It's going to mix a little bit with the red. And that might give us some really nice tones. So we've got our darks. We've got our lights. Last color is mahogany. Mahogany is kind of a red-brown color. I don't want to use brown. Brown by itself is not a real great color. So I'm just going to pull these out. What do we got? 7 colors. Lucky 7s. Oftentimes I like to use a cool color to start with. Remember that all this graphite we got to get rid of. So I want to get rid of it as soon as I can so it doesn't mix with my colors. If I mix this graphite with some of my colors, then it turns muddy. I'm going to start then drawing with this purple. And that's going to get all my darks. Where you start is totally up to you. This is kind of like ink. If we were drawing with ink, you'd want to pick out all the darkest areas and define things. Remember, we don't want to draw a line around everything. Just kind of pick and choose where we start. I'm going to start with his nose and just kind of work my way this way and down. So here's his little nose. I'm just going to kind of pick that out. And there's a lot of it that I cannot see. When in doubt, leave it out. So I'm just going to do some little edges there. And remember your edges, just a couple little dots and dashes like that. That's about all you need. The cool thing about colored pencils is that you can do a little drawing, then you can erase over the top. It'll take out the graphite and leave your colored pencil behind. So I'm just going to sketch in very quickly some of the darkest areas with this purple. I'm not so concerned that the color is exactly the same. When you're looking at an object and you see a certain color, we call that local color. That's the color that's of the object. We don't need that. I mean, you can make this squirrel psychedelic, and as long as your values are correct, it's still going to look good. So just go crazy with color. Again, I'm just using little dots and dashes to create my edges. And come in, here's the dark of his tail. And I'm just using that little feathered line. Here's his eye. Got a fairly large eye. We always come back in and darken in areas. If you wanted to, you could even start out with some black, but the black is only in small areas. You don't have it everywhere. So like where our little edges are, I can do this purple and it'll get lost when I start coloring other colors on top of it. Whereas the black doesn't get lost as easily. Here's some of the little soft, fuzzy little areas there that those feathered lines are going to make it look soft. Remember, just like in ink, if you want something to look soft and fuzzy, you leave it out. So then I can get rid of my graphite, and I still have some little guidelines for me. All this stuff, I can get rid of all that graphite. My colored pencil is left behind. And don't go too far. Some of you are drawing too much. There's that happy medium that you have to kind of figure out how much to draw and how much not to draw. Some of the best drawings leave a lot out. We learn that with ink. There's a couple little whiskers to just help define that little edge of his nose. These are those feathered lines where you just kind of flip them. And because the nut is white right up on top there, I'm going to just leave all that out. Maybe put in just a little edge where it kind of turns, drops down. But all that's going to get left out. So if I get rid of my graphite, that edge is gone. However, you can mentally see it. Okay, that subliminal line that we learned in ink, it's going to be here. And if you wanted to, you can even go in now with the nut, start drawing some of the little darker areas of the nut, just here and there. And it's not important if they're exactly in the right place. Nobody cares about that nut. As you color over some of this purple, it's going to come through and give you that texture. And that's really what you're looking for, is texture, value, color. It's all going to blend together. And hopefully you can see what's going on as we're getting rid of our graphite. All that color is kind of left behind. Once we get rid of that graphite, then we don't have to worry about it blending with our colors, making them muddy. Sometimes I like to use the side of my pencil to shade in, just like you do your drawing pencils. I mean, in my mind, it's all the same. Whether you're painting or drawing, everything is kind of the same. Just trying to pick out your composition, your values. And don't even worry if you can't tell what that thing is. It's okay. It's like his little fingers here. I can hardly see individual little fingers. That's okay. I'm just drawing the darks, what I see. And you're going to end up with this kind of almost kind of a ghost image of your thing, whatever it is. And it doesn't matter what you're drawing. Subject matter is not important. What's important? Composition, value, and color. You got to get rid of that urge to draw a line around everything. I know it's there. Just do the shadows, lights and darks. And it'll be there for you. Just a couple little lines around his tail, just the edge of his tail there, just to show where that's at. There's not a lot of darkness there anyway. Just enough to say this is fuzzy. Unlike ink, though, we can make this go darker or lighter according to the amount of pressure we put on it. I always like getting rid of the graphite. It just makes it look so much better. There's our little ghost image. Got his feet left to do, and then we can go color crazy. Cannot see what's going on in his toes. Doesn't matter. Just going to do those little dark shapes. Call it good. And that's basically it. Once we get more stuff in there, then the little toes will come through. I do want to do some things on the rock, though. Just remember, we can't have a floating squirrel. And so I'm just putting a little bit of this rock in there. These look like leaves. There's some moss. That rock has got a lot of purple in it. Okay, graphite is gone. That's awesome. Then you get to choose whatever you want to choose here, color-wise, to do. I'm going to choose that mahogany. I'm going to go into the nut. There's a little bit around his nose, around some of his ears up in there, down around his arm. This warm kind of a reddish brown. Go over the top of the purple as well. And you're just going to get a whole new dimension of color there. And these colors are just going to start to blend together. And you don't have to go everywhere, just wherever you feel like you need it. And that old adage, when in doubt, leave it out, that's probably going to apply here. Because you can always come back in and add more. I also kind of like to use the side of my pencil because it kind of naturally sharpens it. So if I have to do details, I'm going to go in and have a nice sharp edge for that. And the more we layer in colors, the more our squirrel will come through. Sometimes you'll get a color that you're like, oh, I didn't use that color. They become very translucent, kind of really pretty things. I'm just going to use this mahogany to get some of those little darks of the nut. And again, when in doubt, leave it out. If you think, I don't think I should put it in there, don't. So I don't know if you can see what's happening with his fingers, but if I do all the stuff in between his fingers, then all of a sudden his fingers come through. I didn't draw his fingers. They just are appearing because of the negative space that I draw. Whenever you're doing hair, oftentimes it's not the inside of the hair that's important, it's the edges. And so if you just kind of scribble in the colors for the inside, and then the edges, you get them nice, and you do that little feathered line kind of coming out. I'll throw a little bit of this mahogany in the rock as well. Just I say a little bit of that, but it's going to kind of give a unity between the squirrel and the rock as well. One thing we really need is we need our contrast. We need to make this thing really pop. Best thing to get the contrast, because we've already got the white of the paper is our lightest area. Now we need some dark areas. So I'm going to go into my black. This might be the only time I use black. So I want to make those areas that are really dark kind of pop. And one of them is his eye. His eye has a lot of depth to it, a lot of darkness in there. So I'm just going to go in with my black over the top of the colors I've done. Put in some of that really dark, and it's just, all of a sudden, it just makes everything pop. Boom. So any area that is really dark, just go ahead and put that in there. I might even want to throw in just a little bit of feathered line in some of the dark areas of his fur. You don't need much. So just use that black wherever you see some really dark areas, and it's not much. I might use just a little bit of black in his whiskers towards the end. I want that black to be a little more dominant there. So I'm just going to leave those out for now. There's those feathered lines in there that just helps get some of that texture. You want it nice and fluffy and soft. So those little feathered lines, you just kind of flip them in there. And as we go with other colors on top of that black, that feathered line will stay there. Now we need to warm up that squirrel a little bit. Anytime you want to warm something up, yellow is your key. There isn't a ton of yellow in there, but I'm going to use a lot of this. If I go over the top of the yellow with the purple, it'll still give it kind of a purple cast to it, a purple hue. But the yellow, because it's a complementary color, will cancel out the purple and make it go gray, but still look purple. So I'm just going to, with the side of my pencil here, I'm just going to go in. I'm going over the top of the mahogany, over the top of the purple. Just here and there too. You can pick and choose where you put it. You don't have to put it everywhere. But it's just going to warm it up. The purple's going to kind of go gray, kind of a purpley gray. Anything else is just going to get a little warmer. That warms it right up. Only in those little areas that I feel like it needs that warmth. And over that mahogany, it turns kind of orange. It's really a little, just kind of a lovely feel to it. Maybe even some of our nut needs to go a little more on the yellow side. Maybe not everywhere, but just here and there, just wherever you feel like you need it. A lot of color drawing is more of a feeling than it really is drawing what you see. I mean, you got to kind of draw what you see too, but you know, the Impressionists would look at an object and then look away from it so that they would draw what they felt, the impression that they had of the object, not necessarily what they saw. So sometimes it's just an impression of, hey, this is how I feel about it. His tail is quite warm, so I'm going to do quite a bit of that yellow in his tail. And just scribble in color, just go color crazy. Some of these edges are very light. You can take that yellow and just do some little edges out there. Just enough. A little bit of this red orange, just here and there. I don't see a ton of it, but start out with the tail. It goes over the top of everything. And you can remember, just your edges need to be flipped. That gives it that nice feathery look. Oh, needed more yellow in his ear. The more color you layer into it, the more confident you are too. And you start going, hey, you know what? I could just scribble in those colors. Now it kind of started out with the purple. I'm going to go back over the purple, and when it hits this yellow that's in there, it's going to give it kind of a gray kind of a tone. Nothing wrong with that. Just kind of light, just a light touch. His eye's got a lot of purple in it, so I'm going to go over that. And I'm going to go over the dark. I'm going to just take my purple and give it some pressure, go over that black so that the purple is more dominant than the black. But the black gave me my contrast. I took out a little bit too much in his eye. I'm going to hit that with an eraser right there, just enough. Get that light back out of there. See how that gray now is starting to come through that purple? I can use these little flecky lines in there to get that texture. So the purple over the mahogany, over the yellow, over the orange. It's giving you a whole new dimension of color. His face, his head is the most important part. You always want to spend a little bit more time here. All this part down here, you can kind of scribble that in and still be okay. What do you think about that purple over the yellow? Isn't that neat? It still looks purple, but it's toned down. That yellow just pulls out all that chroma, intensity, brilliancy of it. Any of the gray parts, go ahead and put that purple in there. You can almost just scribble it in. Any of the shadowy areas, blues or purples in the white? So we've got our composition, we've got our proportions and everything. Just go crazy with this. Color crazy. And hopefully, from here on out, you guys are going to be looking at things and seeing colors that you never thought you'd see. Pay attention to those. Your life will be richer. you'll have a greater appreciation for this world. But you got to kind of train your eye to see it. Are you getting those colors in there? Is it looking really pretty? You're like, wow, I didn't know I could do form with all those colors. This is just the tip of the iceberg. There's so much you can do with this. Nobody cares about the rock. You can just throw that in, just put in some colors, a little bit of texture, and you got it. I mean, that much is probably okay. Everybody understands, oh, that's a rock, you know. No big deal. That purple has become my friend here. It really does a lot in the shadows, in the darkness. I'm going to throw some tan. I'm going to do this nut. I'm going to throw a little bit of tan up into him. There's not a lot of it there. More in the nut. So I'm just going to do this. This tan too, I'm going to start adding some pressure. The more you layer in, the more pressure you add to it. And it'll blend all those colors that are underneath and make them go smooth, translucent, beautiful colors. I don't think there's a bad color out there. I think, you know, there's some bad color combinations maybe, but so this tan just is going to blend all that stuff and give that nut that texture that we're all looking for. Now we're not doing a portrait of a nut here, so that nut just needs the texture and the color, and you got it. Everybody understands what it is. I'm going to also go into some of his little warmer areas and use that tan. That will also blend some of that together. And again, I really am just throwing in color. Almost just scribbling. We'll call it controlled scribbling. There's quite a bit of yellow in this tan. So if you go over the purple, it's going to turn kind of that brownish gray. Remember, when you want to tone down the chroma, the intensity, the brilliancy of a color, you add its complement. And there's lots of different ways to add complements. It doesn't have to be pure yellow. It can be even yellow-green. And I think once you understand that, then all of a sudden you're going to find your world is opened up to being able to draw with color. That's what it's all about. I'm not going everywhere, just wherever I feel like I need it. Didn't really think I was going to like this tan, but I really like this tan in there. I like it over the top of the purple. That just tones that purple right down. I like his tail. I like all those colors we've layered into his tail. Just comes through and it just looks awesome. Almost like this kaleidoscope of color happening in your eye. And the black just makes everything pop. Haven't used any of that magenta yet. I think I'm going to just throw in a little bit here and there. That magenta over everything is going to look a little on the red side. So it's going to be a little warm, but in with the purple, it's going to go that red violet. Remember that we're not drawing local color. We're wanting this to look bright and vibrant and beautiful. Not necessarily exactly what a squirrel looks like. Some of this magenta in the shadows is kind of nice. That magenta just warms things up. And that little bit of scribble that you do gives it that artsy kind of fresh, juicy kind of a feel. What's the last thing you're going to do to this? Sign it. Make sure your signature is in there. A good place for the signature is either right behind his tail right here, or maybe just under the nut over the top of this little rock. That signature is important. That's your copyright. That's your stamp of approval. And thank you so much for being here. Thank you for drawing with me. Thank you for being willing to step out on that limb and do something you've never done before. Hopefully, art's made your life a little bit nicer. And I hope y'all have a lovely day.